Hey everyone, Dan here, and I recently hit 500 subscribers, 26 subscribers ago at the time of recording, and I decided to do a Q&A, so I told you guys to ask me some questions. Here's what we have. First up, from Central Maryland Rail Fan, what's your favorite WMATA train? I actually like the 6000 series trains most. I think the seats are more comfortable. I think the layout makes more sense. I'm not a big fan of the seating on the sides, especially because DC's Metro is kind of doubles as commuter rail in a lot of areas, and having the seats be, I don't know, like forwards and backwards. I can't remember what the phrase between like longitudinal and latitudinal. Those are hard words to say. I don't know, I can't remember which is which, and I also apparently can't say them. So I prefer the forward and backwards facing seats, and I think the 6000 does better on those. They're also a little bit easier, at least with the way that I bring my bike with me. They're easier to bring bikes on, and I think the seats are more comfortable. The 7000 series seats are a little bit harder, and bringing bikes on them is a little bit more of a pain. But as long as you're not on the 3000 series trains, bikes really aren't that big of a deal. I'll like hook my my handbrake around one of the poles, and it just kind of keeps it in place where I really don't have to mess with it. That's not possible to do on the 3000 series trains. So the 6000 ones, those are my preferred ones. As more time passes, the more I'm actually souring on the 8000 series trains. I think there's still going to be a dramatic improvement, but I've developed more criticisms of them over time. They're not in circulation yet. Things could change. I'm really just going off of the mock-up that I saw like once. But yeah, I like the 6000 trains. Cope Bro asks, face reveal? Not until I hit 1 million subscribers. Shortline 819 asks, thoughts on current Metro Rail extension proposals, the Bloop, Silver Line Express, etc. I think whenever we see the introduction of the automatic train controls, some express services I think will become possible, and if it's areas where it's above ground or on a viaduct, you could see third or quad tracking come into play. So I think there is a future timeline where at least some areas on the network could see express trains. If we're looking in the core of downtown, aside from the Red Line in Northeast, I don't think we're going to get express trains in any meaningful way, probably ever. Thoughts on the Bloop? It generally is pretty good. My only issue with it is on the south side of the Anacostia. I think it would make more sense to have the blue and the green share tracks through most of DC, through Anacostia, Capitol Heights, that sort of area. Congress Heights, whichever one is down in that area. St. Elizabeth's, that corridor there. I don't think having an extra track on that other side is going to be particularly necessary, especially if Metro ever continues with their plans to make a streetcar in that area, which that area would probably be more of a proper LRT than a streetcar, but if they ever develop that, it would kind of make the Metro line redundant. I have a couple questions here from my arch nemesis, 29 down the line. The first one, what is your favorite transit line? That's going to be a tough one. I don't know that I have a single standout example that comes to mind. I like the 7 train in New York. It's solid service, but a lot of it is the route that it goes through. And you're going through so many different cultures in that one stretch. You're basically traveling the world on a single train, so the 7 train's pretty nice. I don't necessarily know that I have a favorite in terms of like a more traditional one, but if we're talking about more like unique rail lines, we could be looking something like the Yellow Line or the Skokie Swift, I think is what it's called in Chicago. That one's a pretty interesting route. Norristown High Speed Line, that is something I've been looking to go to Philadelphia, not just for that, but that would be probably one of the main reasons why I'm planning on going there here soon. Buffalo, New York has a light rail that's like underground in every area except for downtown, which is the area where you would expect it to be underground in. And then I'm a big fan of what a lot of Australian cities are doing with their suburban rail systems, and I think it's something that the US could replicate. But I don't know that I have like a traditional favorite transit line. I'm not really too familiar with separate lines outside of like just DC. The Green Line in Boston is also a very interesting one. It's not metro, it's light rail, and it's like 5 different light rail lines, but categorized as one. If you can add an infill station anywhere on the existing DC metro system, where would it be? So I actually intend on making a video about this in the near future, but a few places that come to mind. The first one would be either Oklahoma Avenue or something on the south side of the Anacostia on the BOS corridor before you get as far out as like Benning Road. Basically, east of the bridge, but like to where you don't have to go all the way into DC to Stadium Armory to change between like orange and silver. Something either on or on the east side of the bridge I think would make a lot of sense. I also think a station south of Crystal City and north of Potomac Yard could possibly see some use. That part of Metroway still is pretty usable, and that area is still experiencing a lot of growth, but I don't know that that one's super necessary. A lot of people want to see a station at Wolf Trap. I don't know that that makes sense because the passenger volume there is going to be really irregular and usually not much. I think on the Red Line on either of the Montgomery College campuses, which would be between Rockville and Shady Grove or between Tacoma and Silver Spring, I think either of those spots would be a good area. And then something on the Blue Line between Alexandria and Van Dorn Street. Out of all those, I think an Oklahoma Avenue station would be the most useful. Which bus network in the DC area, excluding Metro Bus, is your best or favorite? Oh, that would be the Montgomery County Ride-On. They've done a lot of route developing, and as much as I've complained about their naming being really dumb, the Great Seneca Transit System Plan or whatever has a lot of improvements in mind. They're working on not BRT, but better and more reliable bus services. There's even been some light rail proposals they've put out there. They're doing good work up in Montgomery County. How would you grade Randy Clark as GM of WMATA? How much do you think things have improved since he took his position? I'm probably not the right person to ask about that because I haven't lived in DC for very long and wasn't really paying attention to a lot of the system until I moved here. But from what I can tell, Randy Clark has done a good deal of improving the system, like even excluding COVID recovery. You know, it's under him that the second half of the Silver Line expansion took place. Frequencies have improved dramatically. We're getting automatic train operations back up and going. I've heard a lot of people basically say he is like the best transit agency manager in the United States right now. So I do think pretty highly of him. From Gamwolfers, what's a good place in the DC area and your hometown in Wyoming that is underrated and that people should visit? So if we're talking in DC, a lot of people come here for seeing the monuments and stuff around the federal government and not necessarily a lot of stuff for DC specifically. Because DC is not just the federal government. There's a whole culture and atmosphere outside of just the federal government here that a lot of people don't really know about. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to 8th Street. There's a lot of nightlife. There's a lot of different cultures in that area of town. And I think it does a pretty good job at kind of encapsulating a lot of the non-federal government part of DC. Oh yeah, and there's a streetcar. As far as my hometown in Wyoming, I don't know that really much comes to mind. Specifically, my hometown, there's really not much other than it's not that far from the Black Hills, so it's not far from like Devil's Tower, Mount Rushmore, things like that. There's not really anything to do in town. There's a cool auto museum if you like cars. If you like rodeos, there's usually rodeos. Neither of those are particularly my thing. There are a lot of good restaurants there, though, so definitely trying out some of the local places. Pizza Corello and Toki's come to mind. I feel like one of them's a bit of like a novel pizza restaurant. The other one's just a really good barbecue place. And from JanChat20, what U.S. or international transit system would you like to cover next? That's going to be Philadelphia. I have something coming up in Baltimore. Once I get the money for it, I intend on making a whole series of videos about Philadelphia. One of the things about DC is the system here doesn't have a lot of jank, and the jank is what makes things interesting. DC has 6 lines. They're all really standardized. There's not a lot unique between them. DC doesn't have a lot, and what it does have is too good to be interesting. Whereas Philadelphia's 2 subway lines, a 3rd subway line, not 3 subway lines, 2 and then 1. It has one of the largest commuter rail systems in the country. It has a light rail line, and then it has a Norristown high-speed line, which is its own thing. And it has all the trolleys. It's like the trolley city. Oh, and trolley buses. Boston, I'm also wanting to do Boston here soon too. New York is going to require multiple visits because New York is massive. And even if I were to go to like just Manhattan or just New Jersey or even just Staten Island, there would still be so much to do. Chicago's got a lot of stuff too. I'm wanting to go to Chicago, but right now Philadelphia's at the top of the list. Is there one transit system that should be the gold standard of transit? Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo come to mind. Tokyo's got the weakness of their transit is split between a bunch of different providers and getting around them can be a little complicated. Singapore and Hong Kong are basically their own countries though. So they've had a bit of an incentive to have like a single strung together transit system. They're also really densely populated, but because of those restrictions, they've been pretty much forced to have to come up with like a really good system. Though what I will say in terms of American transit, I think we can look at Australia's suburban rail system and we can adopt a lot of that over here. Now, don't get me wrong, Australia is not exactly a transit country. They're still very much like the US, they're a car country. But considering that they have a really similar urban fabric to us and they have higher suburban rail ridership than we do here, I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. And that's also another video I plan on making, even though I would ideally want to go to Australia to film. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Which of all criteria in your ranking videos are most important to you? Probably land use, because the station's pretty useless if there's nothing around it for you to get to. Loudon Gateway, Greenbelt, Shady Grove. Greenbelt and Shady Grove only have ridership because they're terminus stations with pretty good bus connections. Loudon Gateway doesn't get anything. Denver has its problem. LA has its problem. Dallas has its problem. All three of those systems are actually pretty big. They cover a lot of the city, but there's just nothing to go to at the stations themselves. Whereas you have like New York, DC, and Boston, you have so much transit-oriented development around them that the stations are actually useful for the most part. Also, why Dr. Pepper? I think I explained that in the original Dr. Pepper test, which is currently not up because it got removed for a copyright thing. I'll eventually put it back up, but for now, I'm actually going to append the original Dr. Pepper test at the end of this video, so stay tuned for it, because I want to make sure that important piece of channel history is actually up somewhere. It's from the old Branch Avenue Station Review was the original one. There's also the old Dr. Pepper PowerPoint presentation that I made, I think a couple years ago at this point. I'll have that linked up in the card in whichever corner. It is definitely a comedy video, and it's comedy that may not be for everybody, so viewer discretion advised. But that's all the questions I have. Also, in celebration of hitting the subscriber mark, I have officially launched the Discord server for this channel. So if you want to come talk to me or other community members, the link to that will be in the description or pinned comment below. Come say hi. Alright, so new thing to test out in the station reviews is I'm going to call it the Dr. Pepper test. Basically, how quickly from the station can I buy a Dr. Pepper? Touching a pylon, it counts. I'll start the timer, we'll go. Alright, so looking at a map here, it looks like there's a food hall up here in these apartments across the parking lot. That looks like it's going to be my best bet. There's wind. I don't have windproofing on my microphone. I'm sorry. But it looks like the Spot Food Hall. If anywhere's gonna have Dr. Pepper, it's there. And if they don't, there's Milk and Honey and a Subway up there that also might have Dr. Pepper. So, we'll go see. Wow, I need to get a gimbal. Point of the Dr. Pepper test. I feel like it's a great shorthand to figure out like how urban friendly an area is. Because the quicker that you can buy something basic like a Dr. Pepper shows that thought has been put into the land use around it to even a bare minimum extent. Because you have a lot of stations. Greenbelt comes to mind as one of the worst land uses in the entire system, where effectively you just can't go buy anything, not even something as simple as a Dr. Pepper. Branch Avenue, that's not the case. What? It's fenced off. Okay, I'll have to figure something out here. Let's see. What? Where am I supposed to go? I think they have this fenced off because of Metrofest. So I'm gonna have to go back up and around. I'm gonna figure out how to get out of here first. because it's like over there. And no, I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, I'm gonna take the time off. No, it was confusing for me to get out of the parking lot. I'm not the only person who would have fallen for this. This is the train we were looking at earlier for the MetroFest stuff. The one that it's currently a playground. So this looks like it's the right way. So I decided to go with Dr. Pepper instead of like Pepsi or Coke because A, Dr. Pepper is like by far my favorite soda. And B, not everywhere has Dr. Pepper. So just because there's a Pepsi vending machine doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna pass the test. Like specifically Dr. Pepper. I don't really care what size. If I go in there and it's a 12-pack, then I guess I'm taking the 12-pack home with me on the train. You know, normally I say jaywalking's not a crime, jaywalking is a skill. But I'm on camera and time penalty, well, it didn't matter anyways. I'm gonna follow the law while I'm doing the Dr. Pepper test. Gonna be a good little noodle. Restaurant Row Apollo. I don't even know what all's over here. I just saw a bunch of restaurants. I'm like, cool, one of them's gonna have a mountain, or not a Mountain Dew, a Dr. Pepper I can get from a fountain. It's a food hall. They probably have multiple vendors in here. Might try the Subway though, just to be sure. Bingo. Can I just get a small fountain drink?
Okay. No sandwich today?
No sandwich, just a fountain drink.
Oh, fountain. Large or small?
Small.
Thank you, bro.
Right, thank you. All right, 10 minutes, 45 seconds. So, just under 11 minutes for the Dr. Pepper test.